Hello again. I'm Liat and I lead commerce marketing at Wix. In this lesson, we'll learn how to create your business plan. Like any big project, you need a clear focus and measurable goals. That way, you can stay the course, celebrate milestones, and revise strategy as needed. Some of you might already be selling online, which is great, and some of you might not even know where to begin, and that's okay. The key to success is great research and planning. In this lesson, you'll learn how to focus on a concept and idea, conduct market research, complete a SWOT analysis, set product pricing, plan your business finances, and finally, wrap it all up in your business plan. Let's start with your idea. Every business needs to be based on a concept, and there's no one place to start. You might be inspired by your hobbies and interests. Maybe it's a professional skill, and maybe you simply have an entrepreneurial mindset. What always helps, though, is to focus on something that you're either really great at or really passionate about. Choose something you understand well and love. Then think about the market. Think about the gaps that you're trying to close. Think about the other competitors and what sets you apart. And once you have this high-level idea in place, this is going to serve as the base for your entire business plan. Next, let's talk about market research. There's a lot to cover here. We'll talk about data sources you can use to find out more about your market. And we'll also talk about the methods you can use to do your research. Let's start with where you find your market data. This is twofold, consisting of gathering information about your buyer and target audience, and then researching competitors. Let's start with buyer personas, or your target audience. You'll need to think about customer demographics, customer pain points, what influences your customers' buying behavior, and whether or not you have product market fit. Next, let's talk about the competitor landscape. You'll need to think about competitors who offer products or services either exactly like yours or similar to yours, and you'll also need to think about competitors with peripheral products or services to your market. Finally, don't forget to look at the market trends. Now let's talk about some of the research methods that you can use. These will differ depending on whether you're looking at primary sources of data or secondary sources of data. Primary sources of data are data that you have direct access to from your existing business or customer base or people that you directly interact with. And secondary sources will be things like market reports or data about competitors that you can access to think about what's right for your business. Let's start with the primary sources where you're defining your buyer persona or target audience. You should do some exploratory research. This means that you'll do interviews or surveys with customers or focus groups in which you will explore the potential gain points and pain points for your consumers. Try to be specific. Once you've identified an issue, you'll follow up with additional questions, and you should also focus on a specific audience segment and ask them more questions about solving particular needs. Next, let's talk about secondary sources, such as trend reports, industry content, and sales data about competitors. Some of this information is actually readily available publicly, such as government stats on various industries. You'll also find some commercial reports about industry insights. These are often paid content. And last, you can use internal in-house marketing data. For example, the cost of average sales, customer retention rates, and anything that gives you info on your consumers and their buying behavior. Now that we've covered all of that theory, let's try and talk about this more practically and think about how you would actually conduct your market research. So to do that, I've chosen an example of an existing online merchant. We're going to be looking at Hip Hip Shop. They're a brick-and-mortar toy store based in New York, and they recently created their online store so that they could expand to a bigger market across the US. Let's start by thinking about creating our buyer personas. At this point, I think it's a good idea for you guys to download the template we've provided for creating your buyer persona, and you can do the process along with me. Let's start by defining the characteristics or demographics of your buyer persona. So for Hip Hip Shop, we'll start with age. We know that most of the people buying from this store are either parents or grandparents of children aged 3 and above. Of course, not the children themselves. In terms of gender, we're talking about parents and grandparents, so really it doesn't matter which gender we're referring to. In terms of location, we already mentioned that Hip Hip Shop are based in New York, but that they're trying to expand across the US market. You should think about how much disposable income your buyers have and how much they would typically spend on this type of product. In the case of Hip Hip Shop, we're talking about parents or grandparents from middle to upper middle class homes who have disposable income to spend on eco-friendly toys for their children and grandchildren. Family status. Think about who your clients are and who they're buying for. In this case, we're thinking about families who have small children aged 3 to 5. And this leads us on to the potential pain points. You always need to be aware of what could possibly go wrong. So in this case, we need to make sure that we're providing safe toys made out of eco-friendly materials. Once you've established a good idea of who you think your demographic base is, it's time to actually start speaking to potential buyers and customers. You can do this using a focus group, phone interviews, or even in-person interviews. Let's talk about how you know which people to use for these kinds of interviews. We always recommend to start with your main persona first, even though you might have more than one. So in the case of Hip Hip Shop, we have 2 main personas, one being parents, the second being grandparents. So in this case, we're going to start with our main group, which would be the parents, and later on come back to the grandparents. Once you know who you're focusing in on and would like to speak to, try and find customers who are active with your business. Maybe someone who recently made a purchase, or if you do have a brick-and-mortar business, a customer that recently visited the store. If you aren't already selling, a good idea would be to try and engage customers who could potentially be interested in your business. Maybe you already have a social media channel like Facebook page. You could try and reach out to people that way. And if you have no way of interacting with customers yet, try and find a competitor that's as close to your market as possible and try and reach out to people buying from that company. In any case, it's always a good idea to create a mixed sample group. You want people who already love your product and are buying from your business, but you also want some people who maybe did not buy from your business, who considered it and decided to pass. Also, make sure to always include some buyers who are buying from competitors so that you know what they are offering that you need to be competing with. It's always a good idea to try and incentivize your customers to participate in your research. So offer them a coupon or a gift, or maybe access to limited content so that they have a reason to participate and give you the information that you need. Once you've gathered the customers that you're going to be speaking to, it's time to prepare your research questions. Make sure that you're going to be using open-ended questions instead of a script, as you'll always get better results. We've prepared a template that you can use of some research questions, so now would be a good time for you to download that template. Whatever questions you're planning on using, it's important to gather information at least on the following: customer background information, customer awareness of your product, brand, or the problem you're trying to solve. Consideration, meaning how has the buyer tried to solve their pain point? What are they searching for? Or what details are most important and relevant to potential buyers? Decision points. How did buyers solve their issues? Which solutions were they already choosing? Are there pros and cons to each? And what makes the most impact on their decisions? And finally, closing. What do buyers expect from you? What would improve their customer journey or experience? And always don't forget to thank your clients for participating in your research. Now we'll move on to the secondary research stage, where you find and list all of your competitors and also collect as much market research as possible. This will help you to understand the market that you're playing in and who you're competing against. Start by collecting market reports for your industry. In the case of Hip Hip Shop, we've collected 3 different reports on the toy market and toy industry. Next, you should search your industry competitors on social media and other relevant sources to your customer base. Now that you've collected all of this data, it's time to summarize your research and findings. You're going to want to organize this and keep updating it periodically, either if there are changes in your market, new competitors joining the space, or perhaps if you want to add additional products or services that you weren't already offering. Let's try and summarize the findings for Hip Hip Shop. So we know that Hip Hip Shop sell locally in New York at the moment, and most of their customers are finding them through recommendations, by word of mouth, through people that they know and trust. We also know that parents and grandparents' biggest concern when buying toys and products for children are safety regulations. This leads us to understand that Hip Hip Shop's biggest challenge is going to be building a trusted brand online that people feel safe buying from. Now that we've completed our market research, it's time to use our findings to conduct our SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. It's really important to remember that strengths and weaknesses refer specifically to your business, meaning what do you do better than others, and where are you possibly weaker or less successful than competitors. And opportunities and threats refer to the market, meaning that those opportunities and threats are the same for anyone playing in this same market and can be taken advantage of or impact any business. Let's break down what a SWOT is a little bit further. Strengths. As I mentioned, these are things your business does well, meaning qualities or values that set you apart from your competitors, such as internal resources that your team brings, or things that you do better than anyone else. Weaknesses. These are things your business lacks, things competitors do better, or limitations that you have to your resources or internal talents. Opportunities. This could be an underserved market for your product, few competitors in your market, a new emerging or growing need for your product, or the fact that your product is trending. Threats. This could include anything from emerging or growing competitors to an unstable industry or changing industry regulations, or possibly negative press for products in your product category and having poor or no product market fit. So let's run through a potential SWOT for Hip Hip Shop, starting with strengths. Since Hip Hip Shop already have their brick and mortar store and are selling well, they've managed to build up a good production base and reliable vendors, which means that having a steady supply of products should be very easy for them. But if we think about a weakness, since Hip Hip Shop have mostly sold through their brick and mortar store and not much online up until now, shipping and fulfillment at scale is going to be new and possibly challenging for them. Moving on to market opportunities. So at the moment, eco-friendly toys, and specifically wooden toys, are quite trendy, and there is quite a lot of demand out there for them. On the other hand, if we think about potential threats, these type of toys also bring with them a lot of safety risk, which means that people buying them are more concerned about brand safety and brand recognition. Now let's talk about products. You'll need to decide which products you're planning to sell and how you plan to sell them. You can either produce your products yourself, or you can source them through an external vendor using dropshipping or print on demand. Let's talk about the pros and cons of each. If you choose to produce your products yourself, the pros would be that you have complete control over the quality of your products and what your brand looks like. The cons would be that you would also have complete control over all of your inventory management, your shipping and fulfillment, and of course there might be warehousing costs involved. On the other hand, you could choose to source your products through an external vendor using either dropshipping or print on demand. The pros here would be that it's very easy to add new products at any given time. You have a lot of alternatives to choose from and can easily switch. And that none of the inventory or shipping is on you. That would be handled by the external vendor. The cons, however, would be that you're going to have much more limited control over the quality of your products. And you would also need to establish a good relationship with a reliable vendor in order to ensure your ability to sell at scale. We'll cover more about dropshipping and print on demand in one of the later lessons in this program. Next, let's talk about product pricing. Once you've chosen your products, you're going to have to think about how you're going to price them. There are numerous strategies for creating product pricing and different methods that we'll discuss in a later lesson in this course. But at this stage of your business plan, it is critical that you do answer some basic questions about your product pricing. So here are the major factors for you to consider. How much does your product cost to manufacture or produce? And if you're dropshipping, how much do you need to pay the wholesaler? Also think, how much does your average order cost to fulfill, including packaging, shipping, and other expenses? Going back to our earlier research, remember how much your customers are willing to pay for your product. And are there any situations where customers will be willing to pay more or less? Think about how often your customers are purchasing your products. You'll also need to know how customers prefer to pay. Do they want to pay using cash, credit or debit cards, or using a digital wallet? What are the transaction fees for these types of payment methods? How much do your competitors charge for your products or products similar to yours, and can you compete with their pricing? And finally, how much does your revenue stream contribute to your business in terms of expenses and growth? You can download the template we've provided with these and other questions you should ask yourself about your product pricing. Moving on to financial planning. You'll need to think about how you plan to balance your expenses with your projected revenues. We'll get into more detail on this in a later lesson about finances and pricing. But for now, there are a few key items you should already start thinking about and mapping out for your business. Starting with, what are your fixed costs? What are the things that you have to pay for every single month? After that, what are your recurring costs, such as changing operational expenses, potential marketing budget, and additional product costs? And finally, think about if you have any other overhead or miscellaneous costs involved. Next, you'll have to do some kind of projection of your revenue. You can download the P&L template we've provided for you to help you in doing this, and also get more details in the course later on. And now finally, creating your business plan. Now it's time to take all the research and data that we've collected and wrap up all your decisions and findings into one concise document, your business plan. Download the document that we've provided as a base for creating your business plan. This is going to serve for your business as the core for everything you do moving forward. You can use this document to share with your team, with potential investors, and also as a reference point for you to come back to at any point to check on your milestones and also to revise strategy if needed. Let's run through a quick overview of what you'll cover in your business plan. First, you'll have an executive summary. Make sure to define your business goals and missions. Pitch your USP, meaning your unique selling point, and how you plan on measuring success. Next, cover your market analysis overview. This is where you're going to cover your market segments, buyer personas and target audiences, cover your competitor research and industry forecasts, and include the SWOT analysis you did for your business. Next, list your product catalog and pricing strategy. After that, your financial plan, and finally, include your go-to-market. To complete your go-to-market, you'll need to build your marketing plan. And for that, we suggest you come back to our next course on how to market your online store. But for now, you've mapped out your entire business plan, and you're ready to move on to the next stage of creating your online store. Congratulations! The base of your business plan is ready, and you've mapped out all the decisions you need for your business. Now you're ready to move on with actually building your online store.